want to share with you the scripture for the day. I had to use $1 for bookmarking. My kids kept trying to put it in the offering plate. I kept saying, that's where I'm marking the passage. Don't take that $1 yet. But let me just share with you. This is, the lectionary is this 3-year schedule of scriptures. The idea is it'll help the church cover all the basics of our faith over the course of 3 years. And so in this season of getting ready for Easter, this is the passage for the day. This is the gospel text. It's Mark 8, verses 31 through 38. It's on page 44 of the New Testament. And Jesus has just gotten done asking the disciples, who do people say that I am? And then finally, who do you say that I am? And they're going along, so there's Jesus, and there's the 12, and there's a larger crowd. And you can hear the way they're interacting in this part of the story. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering, be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. That's Peter rebuking Jesus. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, but turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd who was with his disciples, and he said to them, "If you want to become my followers, if any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will be ashamed when he comes to the glory of his Father with the holy angels." Amen. I graduated from college in 1989. I got a bachelor's degree in anthropology, and a lot of my friends were doing archaeology. And in 1990, DNA science, where you could analyze individual parts of a DNA strand, that was brand new. And forensics was being invented in 1990. When one of the most interesting excavations in the United States, been excavated several times, but they left it alone because they just didn't have the science, was the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Custer's last stand. And the problem there is that the bodies of the 7th Cavalry of the U.S. Army and the Lakota Sioux, all of these bodies are jumbled together, and they couldn't tell which were Native Americans and which were soldiers in the U.S. Army, because a lot of the Native Americans actually had better rifles. They had repeating rifles. And they had already beaten up the U.S. Army, and a lot of them were wearing U.S. Army uniforms as trophies when they went into combat. So 100 years later, they couldn't tell what was there. So they just left it for a future generation. But see, by 1990, now we had this great DNA science. And we could sort out which side people were on. But what they found out when they did the DNA analysis was they learned that the average male warrior of the Lakota Sioux tribe had at least what we consider 1/4 European ancestry. And the average soldier in the 7th Cavalry Regiment of the U.S. Army had at least 1/4 Native American ancestry. So DNA didn't tell you which side they were fighting for that day. And so they couldn't use DNA at all. You know what they wound up using? The bones in their feet. Because if you served in the U.S. Army on horseback, you wore those cowboy boots. We used to call them cockroach killers. You know, the pointy-toed ones, you can get in the corner, see. You're going to cockroach them. The reason they wore pointy-toed boots is so you can put your foot back in the stirrup if you're falling off the horse. You can kick and put your foot back in the stirrup. The Indians didn't use stirrups. They just wore moccasins. And moccasins will tend to make you flat-footed. That your feet spread out and get wide. So they could tell the cowboys from the Indians by the way they lived their life. DNA didn't matter. It wasn't really an issue. What mattered was what side you were fighting for, and that was determined. It shaped the way you lived. See, what we do shapes our bodies. You know that. That's why the coach or the doctor or your exercise coach tells you to work out all the time. Not just once in a while, right? Certainly not once a week. That's not enough of a workout to do anything to change your body. But the things that we do regularly, it changes us, changes our bodies. My brother has little ruts on his fingers of his left hand. He plays the guitar so much, it wears into his fingers. The shape of his fingers are changed by how much he plays guitar. I had a roommate in college who was a bowling champion. Had bowled at least, I think, between 10 and 20 perfect games. And his ring finger was longer than his middle finger. He threw what's called a hammer, and he could put English on that ball, and the way he let go of the ball stretched out his finger over time. He often played 10 games a day behind him. He was quite a bowler. But see, the things we do change our bodies. I'll tell you what else, the things that we do change our minds. I love archery. It's a fantastic hobby. It's a great sport. When I started shooting, I like the primitive style, so I shoot a recurve, and my arrow leaves at 185 feet per second. When I started shooting, I would let go of the arrow and it would just appear down there. It seemed like instantaneously at the target. But you know, in the 10 years that I've been doing this, now I can see the arrow in flight. It's not that my eyes have gotten quicker, my brain has gotten quicker. And I've learned what to look for, and I've learned how to anticipate it. And so it travels the 30 yards to the target in half a second. But in that half a second, now I can see if the arrow is wiggling sideways or if it's wiggling up and down. I can see that because habit has changed the way my mind works when it comes to watching an arrow. You've got things like that in your life, but the things that we do change our bodies. The things that we do change our minds. And I believe that the things that we do and the things that we intend to change our souls. Has an impact on our souls. Here's Peter rebuking Jesus. Peter rebukes Jesus because he's thinking in an earthly style, right? He's expecting Jesus to be an earthly king. He wants to see Jesus kick out the Roman Empire and set up the throne of David in Jerusalem, maybe raise an army, maybe set up a Jewish empire bigger than the Roman Empire. But see, he's thinking in an earthly way. He's thinking in a human way. And ultimately that is in opposition to God. Because Jesus was there. Jesus was going to Jerusalem not to be an earthly king, but to be the Prince of Peace. Not to rule over an empire, but to rule over human hearts that recognize the presence of God. But Peter's thinking in an earthly way. Peter thinks he knows what's best for Jesus. Peter thinks he knows what's best for this movement, for this family of people that will eventually be called the church. See, Peter is measuring in a human way because that's his habit. That's the way he spends his time. I mean, he just came from fishing. That's what he did for a living before this whole Jesus movement started. And so he's thinking in terms of this world and measuring victory and defeat in terms of this world. And that's where the problem comes in this verse. Jesus says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." Boy, that sounds pretty rough, doesn't it? Is Peter somehow in league with the darkness or doing the bidding of the evil one just because he's asking questions about what Jesus has in mind? Yes. Yeah, he is. He's not trusting that Jesus knows what Jesus is doing. He's seen this man calm a storm with the word. He's seen this man heal somebody born blind. He's seen this man heal incurable diseases like leprosy. But he still thinks he needs to lecture Jesus on how to do his job. It's not just Peter. That's our problem too. See, most Christians, they want to serve God. The trouble is they want to serve God in an advisory capacity. That's not what God needs from us. Jesus doesn't need coaching from Peter. But Peter's just trying to look out for what he sees as best. See, Peter measures in a human way because Peter's been thinking in human terms. And that's not what Jesus calls for us to do. Jesus doesn't look for us to be measuring in human terms. There's another passage, favorite passage of mine. It comes to me more and more to me every year. And it's where Jesus says it this way. Not setting your mind, but Jesus says, seek first, therefore, the kingdom of God and God's righteousness. And all these things will be added to you. So there'll be an empire. Peter, there is a coming kingdom. Don't worry about that. We've got some other work to do first. You see how that works? Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added to you. These other things will take care of themselves, Peter. But if Jesus just said it's important for him to go to Jerusalem and confront the authorities of this world, the kings, the powers and principalities of this age, and let them do what they want, if Jesus says that, it's probably because Jesus knows what needs to happen. See, Peter's measuring human victory, but Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising its shame, now seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus knows what he's doing. So why does this matter to us? Well, I'll tell you, I wasn't able to be here last Sunday when there was an evangelism meeting. But they handed out these little New Testaments that we can carry in our cars or just with me in my pocket. This little New Testament is a chance, it's a way for me to share with people what I believe. But see, this is not a fire extinguisher. This is not a way for me to put out a problem where if some homeless guy is pestering me for money, I just kind of drive him back, be back, go back. That's not what this is. This is a chance for me to go looking for the person who needs to have this Bible. If I put this in my glove box or if I put it in my briefcase, it'll stay there for years while I wait for the right moment. You see that? I'll have to seek the person who needs this. It's not enough just to have it handy. In case it ever comes up like it was some kind of fire extinguisher, I've got to have this ready and be ready to talk about it. When I'm cold, when my kids are misbehaving, when my car's out of gas, when I'm changing a flat tire, that's when it always shows up. That's when opportunity presents itself. When I'm in the middle of the rest of my life. Just like what Peter did. Just in the middle of my life, and I'm going to measure things in a worldly way, I need to be ready to seek the chance to hand out this Bible. It's not a question of, can I have this in my glove box for the year that I need it? The question is, how many of these can I hand out? That's the real test. See, to do that is have a different attitude, a different outlook. To do that is to set my mind on the things of God. Not setting them on earthly things about the other emergency supplies that I have in my glove box in my car. This is about setting my mind on heavenly things and being ready for heavenly things. One of the ways that I can do that is by exercising. I want to exercise my body, salvage what's left of it for the rest of my life. But I exercise it to get my body in shape. I ought to exercise my soul to get my soul in shape. Regular church attendance, praying, reading this little book, not leaving it closed in my glove box, not leaving it on a little doily up on top of the TV set, but actually opening it and reading through it. Prayer. Every prayer that we have, every Sunday morning, this is a little practice run for heaven. Every time I pray, that's a little practice for that day, the day that matters. The day when I look at my Lord and He looks at me face to face. When we meet face to face, that'll be the day that matters. And so all the rest of this is getting ready. All of this is preparation. Being on the lookout for who I can share the gospel with. That's preparation for heaven. That's exercise that makes me stronger, that changes who I am. Just like the shoes I wear, or the exercises that I do, or the things that I practice. Practicing this gets me ready to not just talk about the gospel, but to live out the gospel. The things that we do determine how we live, determine who we are. So setting your minds on the things of God, preparing your heart for its eternal home, not just for this veil of tears we share for a little while. Take up your cross. See, my arthritis is not my cross. My trying to pay my internet bill, that's not my cross. Your cross is not just the bad things that happen to you or the obstacles that come up in this life. Taking up my cross is setting down the worry and the fear, like Peter's worry and his fears. Me worried that I'm going to look like a fool when I try to talk to somebody about the gospel of Jesus Christ. I may look like a fool. Probably I will. I have so far. I will probably continue to look like a fool. And probably the best I can hope for is to be a clown of Christ. But you know what? I need to be able to lay a hold of that and measure by divine measurement and not by human measurement. It's not about me. Peter, it's not about you. It's about the person of Jesus Christ. And if I'm lifting him up, it's a success. And if I look like a clown, who really cares in the last analysis? That doesn't really matter. Worrying about if I'm going to be cool or not, worrying about whether I'm going to be fashionable or hip, those are earthly things. Ultimately, there's the reek of brimstone. There's a little taste of hellfire. You're worrying about whether or not I'm cool. Focusing on the things of Christ. That's what life is. That's where my eternal home is. It's where yours is too. As we get ready to go from this place, we're going to celebrate communion. It's a chance to draw near, a chance to focus one more Sunday morning, to set your mind on Christ. You can do that by setting your feet on the path of peace. Getting ready to meet your Lord in this life, in the heart, even as we get ready to meet the Lord in eternity. Thanks be to God.